Hey there, it's time for Mystery Monday. This month I was really inspired by Amy's Mystery Monday from last time with the Vanessa's purples and grays. And then I was also inspired by Teresa's collection that she combined denims and different garment fabrics in her scraps to pull together this great piece that you're seeing here. She put a little bit of all the denims that she likes to use and just went ahead and made the quilt up in a way that really motivated me to work with these pieces. Even some garment fabrics like that little pin tuck piece in there and the periwinkle. Teresa makes a lot of clothes, and this one is a shirt that she made for a couple of special people in her life. And then the scraps from every time that she's making something out of denim go into her quilts. This is one of her first quilts that she did. Around the outside edge of that, you're going to see a great orange chambray, but she mixed everything with it. Scraps even went so far as to put a border in there that is not a typical border, mixing different pieces for each of the four sides of her quilt. This quilt is one that she made out of the triangles. You can see a close-up there of the chambray, that pumpkin-colored chambray, even some corduroy in there. Kind of a great, fun thing. Probably brings back some memories for a lot of us. So I took this inspiration with all this denim and chambray, and I went for a little tour around the shop, and I started looking at some of the linens and the denims and the options that we have. And I did something kind of different. I went backwards. I picked my garment fabric that I wanted to work with this month, and then I went back and I looked at my collection of fabrics at home that I had in scraps. It was, as you can see, there were lots of choices that I could go. I could go in a lot of different colorways. I settled on this great plum-colored chambray to work with on this piece. And as you can see, I had lots of bright and happy and joyful colors. There's a little thread, extra thread in them. Now my cross thread on my chambrays was a black thread to go with that plum. Great piece to work with. Went home, looked through my scraps, found my boho chic fabrics by Sandy Gervais. A great combination, nice contrast. That's what we're talking about in your pattern to show you what we selected. I had to make sure that my scraps were not too small. That's also in your pattern to tell you how small they have to be, but I really want to use them up. So even my smallest scraps were this, and they were great. Now I went to my chambray fabric and I started cutting there. I started where I moved off to 4 inches, and then I backed off. So then I don't have to do that backwards trim thing. Then I went and I trimmed it out to the size of my strips that I need for my elements. Now ideally I'd move around to the side, but my camera was in the way, so I couldn't show you how to do this part of it where I'd move to do my cross cuts. And so what I did was I turned my fabric, but the same thing, where I'd go off to 6 inches, then I pull it back to 4 inches, then I pull it back to 2 inches. The reason I do that is I don't like repositioning my ruler every time. It tends to move my little squares around, and I can't do as much cutting at a time. Using a sharp blade is a really important feature with this, and I like to work with a good quality blade to do this cutting. Now in this one, I'm actually cutting just the smaller squares. When you cut smaller squares, you want to make sure you have a square ruler. That's why you have a strip ruler. That's why you have square rulers. Square rulers have a nice little L in there. And then I went ahead and I cut my elements, stacked them up in stacks of about 16 so I don't have to keep recutting them. Again, using my square ruler to cut my squares. I've got those little pieces that I'm trimming off. I'm not leaving a whole lot when this is all said and done. This is what you call really using up your scraps. And so we're going to be using up those pieces. It's going to make you feel so good. I don't do all of my cutting. I just do a part of it at a time. And then I'm going to be going to do sewing, because otherwise I get really tired. Look at that little scrap of fabrics over there. Those, I will tell you, it's hard for me to throw those away too. They're just almost too pretty. Going to go to the sewing machine now. Going to stitch these guys out. I walk them into the machine in the order that I want them to go in for my sewing. So walking them into my machine means that I start off putting the 1 and the 2, and then I take the 2 and the 1 when I'm putting together the 4 patch. I don't go all the same direction. That way then, as I'm working on these 4 patches, they're coming out of the machine exactly how I want to, and I don't have to go back and rematch them. In other words, say I don't want the pink next to the pink. I'm actually picking them up off to my left over here in the lower left-hand corner. I pick from each one of these stacks when I go to cut more from these stacks. then I'll be getting more of a combination. Don't have a whole lot of rules about this. Sometimes I try not to put two greens into one. Then I reach around the back, I pull out that 4Z, I clip it off, and I bring it around to the front. I just usually get so impatient at this point that I want to see what that 4-patch is going to turn out like. Plus the fact if I get tired and I go to bed in the middle of this project, I at least have a stack of 4 patches and not a kabillion 2 patches put together. That's real discouraging for me. So I tend to like to see my work as I go along. So here we go, ready to go with a 4-patch. Look at how cute that looks together. Just a really good color combination to go together with it. As I'm working on my 4 patches, I tend to keep working on building the 4 patches in there, but I'm also looking ahead at the next step, because in the next step I tell you that we're building a 3 patch, because we're going to need that somewhere in the mystery as well. And so I'll work on 4 patches for a while till I get tired of doing that, and then I'll work on 3 patches for a while, and I'll just keep going with this until that stack gets up there. I do not spend a lot of time counting. I just keep making the elements, because otherwise I get really discouraged to say, like, I need to cut a kabillion of these. So that's really all you have this month, is you're making some 4 patches, you're making some 3 patches. Get as many of them done as you can, but don't make it a race. And please send us pictures. We're looking forward to hearing more from you. Hope that you're enjoying this. If you don't use chambray, go ahead and use whatever you want, but have a lot of fun with it. I'll bet you have something in your stash that's going to work, even maybe for that garment fabric. Bye. Talk to you next week.